It is the 200 level Mike Carpenter in the basement studio on this frigid Sunday morning. It is game day for Bears fans like myself. After watching the Seahawks last night, I'm not sure how much that matters, but we're going to try to ride this out as long as we possibly can. But this is not a Bears podcast. This is an Illinois basketball and football podcast. And Illinois basketball looks really good right now. And I think it is fair to talk about the improvements that have been made since that Nebraska loss back in December, and start with the guy at the top. So Brad Underwood deserves a lot of credit for what this team has done in these last 7 games, specifically on defense and how much more efficient they are on that side. But I think that as I was watching the game yesterday and there were moments where you couldn't quite put Minnesota away, I realized I wasn't really feeling my temperature rise or anything, because I'm trying to be, fail as I might, reasonable about the fact that not every game is going to be an A game. And this team has had a few off nights, so to speak, in these last 7 games. But the primary difference is this. Because the defense is shored up to the degree in which it has, those off games are not resulting in losses. And keep this in mind as well. The last 7 games, the closest one was an 8-point win at Penn State. An 8-point win at Penn State. A road game. You won road games by 8 points, 11 points, 9 points. You won yesterday by 10. A ho-hum double-digit win in the Big Ten, even against a lesser-than team, is nothing to sneeze at. And the fact that this team has found a myriad of ways to win, regardless of the pace that's being played, and the fact that they have so many tools at their disposal, speaks to a few things that Brad Underwood has done very well this year. I want to start with roster construction and the fact that this team is, in my mind, maybe the most well-rounded roster that he has assembled at Illinois. You can go back to the Io Kofi team, and certainly with Trent and DeMonte and Curbelo when he was good, as fleeting as that was, you had star power, but you ultimately lacked a little bit in the way of depth. We love Georgie. We love DeMonte for what he was. But 1 through 5, there was usually going to be one guy on that court that you maybe couldn't count on if you needed a bucket. I don't feel that way with this team. Also, Kofi, as good as he was, sort of dictated the kind of pace and offense that you were going to play, being a traditional big that he was. So that's the closest comp I can think of, because the Terrence Shannon Jr. year where you make the Elite Eight, you had one of the best players in college basketball on your team. And Coleman wasn't anything to sneeze at either. And you had a really interesting mix of guys that just sort of worked around. Oh, yeah, Marcus Damask, of course. So that was a talented, top-heavy roster. This is a roster that 1 through 8 you feel really good about, and there's interchangeable parts, and goes back to this notion that Brad Underwood's often talked about, which is positionless basketball. And I used to sort of scoff at it because early on, when they weren't winning a lot of games the first 2 years, he would talk about that, and I'm thinking, come on, man, we aren't the Golden State Warriors. And even with his early successes, it's not as if the roster had that positionless sort of thing going on. There was usually a dude that you could count on, whether it be Io or Kofi or Terrence Shannon or Marcus Damask. And then you kind of figured out the rest. This team doesn't have that veteran All-American. I'll get to Keaton Wagler in a bit, and more than just a bit. I'll talk about Keaton probably much of this podcast. But this roster, the way it's constructed, puts so much pressure on opposing defenses because they can't key on one guy. If they do, it will open up a really good look or shot for somebody else. And as time is going on here, we're seeing this is a pretty good shooting team. This is an extremely efficient team offensively. Second best offense in the nation, according to KenPom. That's roster construction, and also leads me to my second point about Brad Underwood. Schematically. And what I mean by that is the macro schematics. I'll get to the issue I have with the in-game in just a second. But there is no denying the fact that Brad Underwood, and to his credit, Tyler, if he is the offensive guru we've been told, have first gotten the pieces to make this offense work, and then come up with an offense where it works at a very high level. And I know that these point totals are not the most gaudy, but what you're doing is playing methodical offense. It's not predicated on transition. And I'd be more concerned about that for the fact that they're really, to borrow one of Brad Underwood's words, elite. They actually are. When you're the second best offense in the country, it's okay to throw that big E word out there. They do have an elite offense. That is a credit first to the roster construction and second to the scheme that they came up with. The difference between this year and last year, they actually have more consistent shooters. And they're older, so that goes back to the roster construction. But, it does work if you're making 35% of your threes. We aren't asking for the world, and that this team is doing that and have been doing it all year should make you, I think, more encouraged when they do face stiffer competition. And that's coming up. So those are the two things that I really wanted to single out here, along with one more. Brad Underwood does have a track record of succeeding or improving after losses. There are 2 years in which that is an exception. And that's last year, and that's the Matthew Meyer year, where they were never quite able to respond consistently after losses. Okay, fine. Those 2 years, you still made the tournament. If those are your off years, you roll with that. This team, after the Nebraska game, has won 7 in a row. There are, frankly, no head cases that I can really think of. I know Tommy has the occasional play where you're like, Tommy, what are you doing? But, I mean, come on. There's no KJ out there, much as we loved him. The guy was kind of a mess. There's no Andre Curbelo. There's no guy that you look at like, oh, God, he's coming back in the game. With the exception of maybe Ben Rickhouse when he doesn't make his shots, but he's doing everything else well. So this team has responded as well as any Brad Underwood team. What it kind of reminds me of is back in 2021. So this is the COVID year. You started that Big Ten, I think 4-2 or 5-3. You lost home games to Ohio State and Maryland, and then you went on a heater, and that was in February into March. This team is already on that heater ahead of schedule. They're avoiding that bad loss. They're avoiding the USCs of the world last year or the Marylands of however many years. I don't think Maryland's going to be the team to upset the apple cart when they come into town Wednesday because they just suck. So you are, in essence, ahead of schedule. You didn't take more time than you needed to figure things out after Nebraska. And that's a credit to Brad Underwood. Probably Cam Crocker as well, because you went from the 43rd defensive efficiency, and now you're 22. You went down a few spots after yesterday. Understandable, because it was not one of their better defensive efforts, but it wasn't terrible either. And it wasn't a sieve like we saw at points the last 2 years, including the Elite Eight team. That Elite Eight team did not have a good defense. They saved their best defensive performance for Iowa State, thankfully. But this is a well-rounded team. This is a really good team. And I've criticized Brad Underwood, and I'll get this out of the way real quick. The two things I've been critical of and will keep me from getting a 10 out of 10 excitement, but more around like an 8.5 with this team until I see it, are, one, the in-game adjustments, for lack of a better term. And the way that I view this, and I've said this before, it is an analytics-driven program, and that is mostly for the best. Mostly. There is this intangible quality that some of the best coaches have, and that is the game in front of them has a pulse, it has a heartbeat, and these coaches have their finger on it, and they're able to adjust on the fly whenever the first sign of trouble emerges, when something that wasn't on the scouting report emerges. They're able to respond quickly. I'm not sure about Brad Underwood's ability to do that. I think that is my biggest question mark with him. The second one, and I've said this before, and this is honestly what happens maybe when you're almost a decade into a tenure, and it's been the same person, and you've had success, but you've had some failures when it matters the most. And full transparency, it is a personality thing, where I'm not the biggest fan of him, the sort of personality that he presents in press conferences. And it's just fatigue, let's call it. But here's the thing I was thinking of. One, I acknowledge that is probably unfair, and that's subjective. But again, guys, I'm not getting credentials to the game, so I will be subjective every now and then. I will try to be aware of it when I do. But it occurred to me, I don't need to love the coach as a dude. I can hold two truths in one hand. It's like, all right, he's been here a while. I got fatigued with certain things, but yeah, he's doing a really good job this year. And he's done a really good job as the head of this program for almost a decade. And I think when all is said and done, for a lot of Illini fans that I've talked to, and even for, just when me and my friends are talking, I'm like, God, am I being just a complete jerk? They're like, nah, sometimes you are, admittedly, but other times I think there is that lingering question mark that many of us have when it comes to March. I am more encouraged by what this team is doing. And I feel pretty strongly right now this is a second weekend team. The only thing that would get in the way of that right now, to my eyes, would be this team themselves. They are, for Operation 3 Seed, on track. Operation 3 Seed's right there. If they win some of these games coming up on the road, 3 big ones on the road in 3 consecutive weekends, if they win 1 or 2 of those, we're talking higher potential seeding. But Operation 3 Seed is still intact. Operation 3 Seed, to me, means this team is very likely looking at a second weekend trip. And you go from there. And I ask you this. If we said right here, right now, this team is making a second weekend of the tournament, are we dubbing this a successful year? I think so. And even if that meant a close loss in the Sweet 16, we're going to go into the offseason and come back and say, okay, yeah, we got our guy. I feel like that's one more little thing that we need, because the Elite Eight trip, as great as it was, it softened the blow, but it does feel like, man, if you can start feeling as if this is a consistent pattern, that no, we don't stink in March, then that lifts, I think, a lot off of the shoulders of watching these games. There's certainly more urgency because of it. And as this team continues to win games, and I think they'll win quite a few of them, it'll be interesting to see if we get more comfortable based on what we watch, or if the anxiety and the urgency kind of tick up because we're thinking, oh, God, what if this team's really good and now we need them to accomplish something great? But it is already and also only January 18th, which is to say we are now about 2/3 of the way through the season. And the picture is becoming more and more clear as to what this team is. And they're really good. So what we're going to talk about today is what's coming up in the schedule. Of course, we'll talk about yesterday's game and kind of the stretch. And the reason I wanted to not do a live pod yesterday, I didn't know if it was going to be that compelling of a game, for one, though it was more compelling than I thought. But I think sometimes it's nice to step away from the live reactions and just react a little bit more, I don't know, with a night's sleep or with a little bit more time removed from it and take a bigger picture look at what's going on. So we'll do that in just a second. But before we get started, and I'll get to the comments in the feed as well, good Sunday morning to you guys, I want to remind you that the best way to support this podcast is to support our sponsors, including Hamilton Walkers. Now, dig this. We are not eating at Hamilton Walkers today. There's a Bears game. There's a garage party that I'm hosting. But we came up with something yesterday. I got a friend. He's bringing some hot, fried chicken. Great. Okay, we got that. And we're talking, let's find some place to get fries. And it occurred to me, well, wait a second. My favorite fries in town, steak fries, because that tends to go best with fried chicken, are at Hamilton Walkers. So I got to order in at Hamilton Walkers to pick up a bunch of fries at 4:30. I got it under my name. A friend's going to grab them on the way over to the garage. And it just occurred to us, because they are, not that this is what their main selling point is, but they do have amazing steak fries. So that was our first go-to. So we'll have a little bit of Hamilton Walkers tonight. I will probably indulge in a Hamilton Walkers full meal within the next month. It is the best restaurant in Champaign-Urbana. Steak, seafood, spirits, old-fashioned to start, bone-in, medium steak, or I get the twin petite fillets, which are 3 ounces each. Family-style sides like the steak fries we're getting, other comfort food sides like the mac and cheese, which is immaculate. Or if you want to, New Year's resolution, you're trying to knock off some LBs, they got some asparagus, green beans, other sides like that go tremendously well with their steaks or other entrees, including fish, including chicken. They even have comfort plates like a hamburger and fries. $20. Best $20 you're going to spend for an amazing hamburger. That's Hamilton Walkers in downtown Champaign. Also, State Farm agent Brian Hansen online at brianismyguy.com for life, auto, home, business, renters, you name it, Brian is my guy, and he could be your guy as well at brianismyguy.com. Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing, your home's best friend. Give them a call at 217-841-4728. and join their maintenance program. No overtime or weekend fees and guaranteed same-day service. That is Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing. And finally, Owen Builders LLC, online at owenbuildersllc.com for your next home improvement project. Check out a gallery of their work and get a free quote while you're there at owenbuildersllc.com. Got to thank Champagne Showers Podcast Network and appreciate you, the listeners and the viewers, for those that are in there. Good morning to you. Go Bears, of course. Some of you will be listening to this after the Bears either win or lose. And the Seahawks await. So we'll cross that bridge if we get there. But about this Illinois team, 7 wins in a row. And a quick recap as to what they were since that Nebraska debacle, which I don't know. Nebraska's 18-0. So, I mean, what can you say? Is it that bad? You played like garbage and you lost by 3. I didn't buy that argument then, but I'm excited to get another crack at him February 1st. But in the meantime, as a quick recap, since the Nebraska game, here have been your results. Missouri, 91-48. You kicked their ass in the bragging rights game. That was a fun night. Southern, 90-55. Did not watch that game because we were getting down to Nashville for the bowl game. Penn State at the Palestra by 8, 73-65. Rutgers at home, 81-55. Smoked them. Iowa on the road, which that's going to get more and more impressive. They're good. 75-69. Northwestern on the road, 79-68. Minnesota at home, 77-67. Here are just some things to recap. And by the way, it looks like some other team bumped Illinois for number 2 offense. So Illinois is sitting at number 3 offensively on KenPom, number 21 defensively. That is 20 spots or so improvement with defensive efficiency. How is Illinois being so effective? Effective field goal percentage, they're at 55.8%. Turnover percentage, they're 40th best in the country. They only turn the ball over on 14.6% of their possessions. Offensive rebounding, 7th best in the country. And free throws attempted versus field goals. Okay, so let's see here. That means your percentage. Here's what they're doing unbelievably well. They are not sending opponents to the line. It's interesting to see this because KenPom has these things called the 4 factors, which they deem to be the most important in determining a team's success. And those are the 4 I just mentioned. Effective field goal percentage, turnover percentage, offensive rebound percentage, and free throws attempted versus field goals attempted. In other words, what percentage of your points are coming from free throws? So here's the dilemma, but I understand why Brad Underwood has this as their mantra. Illinois does not turn the ball over that much. They do not get that many steals. They're 360th in the country in steal percentage. And they are 302nd in non-steal turnover percentage. Okay, right. They are not turning teams over. They're not sending them to the line, and they're getting to the line themselves. I understand that trade-off. We saw early on in the Brad Underwood era, and granted, those teams weren't nearly as good. But we did see teams try to create turnovers. And as Brad said, within a week or two, we were down 8-0 every other game. And I remember that sort of being the thing until they went with a much more conservative kind of defense when Kofi got here and kind of packed it in. I think it was the pack line defense is what it was called. But when I'm looking at this KenPom sheet, what they do with miscellaneous components is what's the next after 4 factors. Illinois has a bunch of green, which is to say they are really high up in these categories. 2-point field goal percentage, they're 58.8%. That is 28th best in the country. Free throw percentage, 80%. They are the 3rd best free throw shooting team in the country. Offensively, non-steal turnover percentage on offense, 4th best in the country. This team doesn't turn the ball over. It occurred to me when watching Keaton Wagler a couple times in the last games actually try to drive to the rim, and then he's trying to initiate contact. He doesn't get the foul, and he turns it over, and it's a steal. How those stand out so vividly because this team is not turning the ball over. I love this one. Average 2-point attempt distance. This is how fine-tuned this stuff is on KenPom. I love it. 4.9 feet from the basket. They're 35th in the country, 35th out of 360 teams at shooting as close to the basket as humanly possible. So layups, right? This team is shooting three-pointers or they're shooting layups. If you want to know why that efficiency is what it is, it's because layups are layups and they're shooting 35% from three. Now, that's not elite. That's not elite. But it's good for 115 in the country. It's top third of college basketball. And when you shoot as many as Illinois does, you will accept a few more misses knowing that it'll all equal out. Where does Illinois struggle? Like I said, they don't turn the ball over. Those are the only Reds I see here is they don't turn the ball over. Interesting. Now, as we go forward, what we're going to talk about here is the schedule coming up and the landmines, shall we say, in front of them. But I don't view them as landmines. You have 3 golden opportunities coming up in the next few weeks. And if you get one of them, you are in fantastic, in my mind, have locked up a 3. Because I'm looking at these other opponents, and Trevor made a good point in our chat thread yesterday. There is not, to our eyes, some gauntlet that Illinois has to go through. There really isn't. You get stretches of home games. You get these tough road games sprinkled in. You do have the West Coast string. What word am I looking for? West Coast stretch, USC and UCLA in mid-February, and that's not going to be easy. But there's not really any sort of gauntlet here. And you end the year at Maryland, which I know before the year we would have been scared of, but they suck. They're so bad. Okay, so as we look at this upcoming schedule, you get Maryland on Wednesday. We would presume a win. Ken Pom predicts a 21-point win. At Purdue. I actually don't hate that matchup. We'll talk about that when we get closer, but okay, fine. We'll see what happens. Washington next Thursday at home. Okay, you get some space there. It's a night game. You know what I love? These home games, with the exception of Indiana on a Sunday, they're all weeknight games, right? They just seem to be more in tune the later the tip-off time. So that's good news. Okay, after the Washington game next Thursday, the 29th, at Nebraska on Sunday the 1st. Shoot your shot. We shall see. Wednesday the 4th, back home against Northwestern. You feel plenty fine against them at home. On the road Saturday, February 7th, at Michigan State. So Purdue, Nebraska, Michigan State, 3 road games in the next 3 weeks. If you get one of them, Operation 3 seed is in fantastic shape. Like you feel like you're kind of locked in there because the Big Ten is going to get a bevy of high seeds. If you get 2 of them, look out. And a conversation starts if you get 2 of those 3. And that conversation is Big Ten championship. I know Michigan is the front runner. Ken Pom has them projected at 16-4 in the Big Ten and Illinois at 15-5. If you get 2 of these 3 road games, we can start talking Big Ten title aspirations. Purdue, by comparison, also 16-4 projection in the Big Ten. Michigan State looks like they are projected at 15-5. So what you kind of have the hierarchy here is, better check Nebraska. You have Nebraska's projected for 16-4. Incredible. 3 teams are projected to finish 16-4 in the Big Ten. Michigan, Nebraska, Purdue. And then Illinois and Michigan State are there on that second line projected to 15-5. So there's work to be done. The Nebraska loss gives them a heads-up advantage on you, but you do get an opportunity to retort on February 1st. But even after that 3-weekend gauntlet, let's say, on the road, then you come back home and you get Wisconsin and Indiana. Not necessarily easy, but you feel okay in those matchups. You go to your West Coast swing is the word I was looking for. USC and UCLA. And then you come home on a Friday night for Michigan, and you get 6 days ahead of that. Tuesday, Oregon at home, they stink. Sunday, March 8th, end the year at Maryland. So it's right there for them. And when I say right there for them, Operation 3 seed, that is there for sure if they win one of those 3 road games coming up. I think they will. And if I were to sit here and predict which one is most likely, I'm still going to go with Nebraska. I don't know why. I just feel like there's a sour taste left in this team's mouth about that, hence the way that they responded since. And the fact that Nebraska just, the metrics don't love them as much as Purdue. And we know what Mackey Arena is. I mean, I'd love to think we can go into Mackey Arena. I think it's going to be a competitive game. I think you're going to have a shot. But when push comes to shove, last 4 minutes, and it's Braden Smith who's won up-team games there, it's tough. It is tough. And at Michigan State, I've been there the last 2 years. I don't know what kind of juju there is at Breslin. It's a cool environment. It's not this crazy, intimidating environment, but this game is different than the two I went to. I went to 2-day games there on weekends. This is another weekend game, but it is a Saturday night, 8 o'clock Eastern tip, I'm pretty sure. And that place is going to be very difficult to get a win. They are not the sexiest of teams, but damn, they're tough. So one of Izzo's best teams in recent memory. So I will say Nebraska is the most likely of those, but what if a week from now we're talking about a win at Purdue? And I'm not going to throw that off the table. You got a shot. And it's not as if, watching Purdue a little bit, I don't know what is going on with Kaufman-Wren. He's still getting his to a degree. But I think you actually have enough dudes to kind of neutralize him. And I know they're big guys at Cuff. Yeah. You know, he's got size, but you got 2 7-footers. And the way Big Z's playing, especially on defense, I don't know. I think it's an interesting matchup. The trickiest thing, of course, is Braden Smith. But if you can get Kylan to just slow him down a little bit and Keaton can just keep Lawyer from going off, I think it's a decent matchup. So I say Nebraska is the most likely. Oddly enough, I think winning at Purdue, I could see every bit as likely as Michigan State. But get one of them. I think that's doable. This team probably thinks they can win all 3. They could win all 3. If they win all 3, they're looking at a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. That's why I play the games. Got some comments here before I get to thank you, David. As I was struggling through my vocabulary to what the West Coast, what's it called? Spring? Swing. There it is. Thank you, David. Before I get to just some observations from yesterday and just kind of what we've seen from the most recent stretch of games with the personnel, a few things here. This is from Illini Brick Girl. I agree that the growth and consistency is starting earlier, hoping it continues. They're forcing lots of late shot clock shots, which is much different. Yeah, Brick Girl, it is an eye test thing. It is a gut feel. This defense is better. I don't know if they're elite like the offense is, because the offense is. I mean, there's very rarely a possession where I don't think they're going to score. And, of course, there's moments, and this is basketball, where you go through these slumps. But I don't know if there's really been any time in the last month and a half where I've said, oh, this offense, it just ain't it. I think it is. But defensively, what's encouraging Brick Roll is you are correct. They are forcing late shot clock shots. What I love about that, too, is to kind of borrow a page, and I know it didn't work out for Ryan Day, but I thought his scheme this year, or this grand idea Ryan Day had, was we're going to slow the pace down in these games. We're going to limit opponents' opportunities. We're going to stretch out our own time of possession. We're going to play less plays than anybody else, so that way we're spring chickens when it comes down to it late in the year. Illinois plays at a very slow pace. A very slow pace. I want to make sure I get this accurate here, but as far as pace is concerned, or tempo, 251st in the country. That is by design. Purdue, 277. Houston, who's right under you, and this is Kelvin Sampson, this is what he does, 355. If you have an efficient offense and you are limiting the number of possessions your opponent gets, your odds of winning skyrocket, I presume. And it's not a coincidence that this team is playing slow. It is very much by design. The other things I think are interesting on KenPom before I get back to a couple more comments here. Illinois has the 16th highest strength of schedule in the country. Some teams that are ahead of you, Michigan at 5th, Duke at 7th, Purdue at 11. Florida is sitting there at 3, so even though they're 13-5, they're really, really good. And the teams that you played, this is what I find interesting. The opponents you played, you have the 16th toughest strength of schedule based on your opponent's offense. So does it stand a chance that maybe some of those early defensive struggles were a mix of implementing Cam Crocker's ideas, but also facing really good offenses? I could see that being the case. It is so heartening to see this team play consistent defense and feel as if, you know what, that could stick. In other words, just like last year and the year before, where you'd watch games and think, dude, we are not stopping them at all. I remember feeling like a broken record that so many of these games against quality competition and even sometimes not so quality competition, no lead felt safe. I think this team actually has the ability, even against some good teams coming up, that if they get that lead, like Iowa, at Iowa, 18th on KenPom, they don't suck. They're pretty good. That this team has the ability to maintain leads in a way that the last 2 years didn't. So that is very encouraging. All right, elsewhere on the chat thread, Illini Brickle had another good one here. The composition of this team and their combined talent is as great as we've ever seen, and they play together unselfishly. I think, as I said, Brickroll, this is Brad Underwood's most well-rounded roster. It is. That is a credit to him. And I would have to go back to, as I said, 2020, 21. But again, I think that was a top-heavy roster with Iowa and Kofi doing what they did. Yes, Grandison played a good role, and DeMonte played his role, and Trent and Curbelo were good point guards, and Curbelo, especially late in the year, god dang. I mean, that was such a flash in the pan, unbelievable stretch that we saw the last month or so from him. But I do think top to bottom, 1 through 8. And that goes to, I'm going to go through the roster real quick, or the guys that are playing it, and talk about them. Before I do, Mihailo Petrovic, I do owe Petrovic, apologist, and maybe him himself, a slight apology. He came in and he added a nice little bit of energy for a team that needed it yesterday. 4 points. He helped kind of stem the tide. So props to Petro. That was a well-played few minutes that he had there that really did steady the ship. Did not have that on my bingo card, but well done by him. And we'll get to Big Z and all that here in a bit. This is from Seth. This team is floating on their talent. Brad literally sat at a timeout with a whiteboard and didn't write down a thing. With a real coach, this could be a hell of a team. All right, now, Seth, you know that I've had my issues, and I will speak to those as the year goes on if they continue to crop up. Does that bother me if he's not doing anything at a time? That doesn't bother me that much, though I would understand how anecdotally you could lump that into other issues that you have with Brad Underwood as a coach. I think that no matter what happens, and this is sort of a situation where your coach is what he is. He is a phenomenal CEO of a high-level program that has resources. He has a good staff to accrue talent. He did make an adjustment with Cam Crocker. His son actually does seem to coach a pretty good offense. So nepotism aside, and I don't like the optics of it, but the results are the results. But I would also understand why you would look at that and say, well, come on, what the hell? I did not pick that out yesterday. I know that he has these different tactics for trying to motivate, whether that be some timeouts, he's not going to say a word. And he's going to just kind of send a message that way. I'm not talking to you guys. Figure it out. I understand as a teacher, I guess, and this is apples, oranges, but, you know, there's buttons that you feel like you can push, and you don't want to push any of them too much because then it starts falling on deaf ears. It becomes less effective. But you have them in your tool bag for when you might need them. And maybe that's it for Brad, the sitting at a timeout and just, you know, not writing anything on the whiteboard. Okay, fine. You know, that's coaches are performative. They do that. And I do think that is another root cause of why I look at a Brett Bielema. I don't find him to be that performative. He just exudes authentic football coach that knows the game and is just very detail oriented. And Brad does have some performative aspects to his coaching that sometimes I'm like, ugh, just win. And that's why I called this episode Just Keep Winning. This is fun, and it is credit to him and this team that they keep winning and being rather impressive in most of them. But Seth, and for anyone else out there that's a skeptic, you know, it's funny, on the spectrum of optimist to skeptic with Brad Underwood, I'm certainly more on the skeptic side because of March disappointments and the occasional one-off game where you're like, why did we not even show up today? Or like yesterday when Crocker Johnson, goes off. And I'm just sitting there. I was kind of doing a test toast of the garage yesterday, making sure that all the heaters and elements would work for the Bears game. So I'm out there watching the first half. I moved to the inside for the second half. For not that I'm that superstitious, but you never know. And Crocker Johnson goes off for 14 in the first half. And I know that he was not the number one guy in the scouting report, but for Christ's sake, there's got to be something you can do. Like Jaden Reed with Northwestern. And fine, Bruce Thornton's Bruce Thornton, but figure something out. Or Bryce Sanford for Nebraska. Figure something out. So yes, Seth, I'm with you. There's moments where I'm like, good golly, man, there's got to be something you can do. He's so good at these macro things. And then these micro things, we go, ugh. And then he will double down on it afterwards as if that was part of the plan or as if that's okay that some rando goes off and pops 28 on your ass. I don't think it is. But all of that is for naught, Seth. And this is what I'm going to... This team is capable of making a Final Four. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. If they make a Final Four, he is either your most accomplished coach in Illinois history. He would have matched the Final Fours that Lou Henson and Bruce Weber made. Check. He's got a Big Ten regular season title. Okay, well, that matches Lou, who had 1. And I know Bruce had 2. Bill Self had 2. He also has 2 Big Ten tournament titles. And here's the other factor that would go into that conversation. Again, if he just makes a Final Four, I know it's not easy, but 1 Final Four. Most accomplished coach in Illinois history because Lou was the only other guy in this program's history that had to build it back up. The other variable here is that none of those coaches dealt with the NIL portal. Bruce Weber's a great guy. I think he would have been bad. In this portal era, it would not have worked. I don't think, at least. Brad is making it work, not to the exact degree we want. See, guys, this is why it's amazing. If someone said, you don't like Brad Underwood, I'm like, well, which part are you talking about? As a coach? What kind of coach? Macro? Overall schematic? Like CEO of the program? You can't ask for much more. And then I got these criticisms. So, yeah, I wish these were better. I mean, I think it's okay, Seth, and for anybody else out there, you can be conflicted on these things. It's not going to affect your rooting for the team. In fact, in some ways, it emboldens it because if this team is uber successful, problem solved. And it feels like this roster could be that. It feels like they are capable, for sure, of being uber successful to the tune of, yeah, maybe a Final Four run. It could be in them. And some things got to shake out, and they'd have to win a really difficult game or two. But I don't know. I'm liking what I'm seeing on January 18th. So, Seth, that's totally fine. And for anybody else out there, what I don't want this podcast to turn into, and I would understand if at first blush, people think that, oh, Carp's just a hater. Like, what a surly bastard he is. And I'm not going to lie to you. The last year, I've been a little bit more surly. I'm not in a great place right now sometimes. And, I was thinking through, and let me rephrase that. I do think that maybe it's external factors, as vague as it sounds, state of the world kind of stuff, pushing 40 years old, midlife crisis if you want to expand it. But again, I'm not going to be buying a convertible anytime soon. But no, I'm sure that there's been podcasts where I've come off more surly in the last year. And it probably started with last year's basketball team. And, oh, God, I mean, that January, February, March stretch. Ugh. But all that aside, I'm not going to come on here and say Brad Underwood's a bad coach because he ain't. And when we say coach, there are so many things that go into that role. And he is excellent at many of them. So what I'm hoping for, Seth, and other skeptics out there, I'm hoping, because he's not going anywhere. And that, again, for the most part, is a good thing. But I know what we want. And I know what questions we want answered. And I hope that he does that. I hope this team does that. We are certainly a fan base that is just weight of the world on our shoulders. And it's not just Underwood's lack of success in March. It's a whole lifetime, man. And it really sometimes only takes one thing to just lift the lid, steam comes out, and then we exhale, and all is good. Bears fans know what I'm talking about. You're telling me this last week, after they beat the Packers in the way that they did in the playoffs, didn't put that big old albatross on your back, just pick it up and just mutilate that sucker. It's gone. And they haven't won the Super Bowl or anything. Illinois doesn't need to win a national title. I'd love for them to, but a Final Four lifts so much of that pressure off of all this. And of course, there is something inherently unfair about that. All right, Brad, you're excelling at all these areas, but in a single elimination tournament, if you lose, we hate you. Well, a little bit unfair, of course. But on the other hand, it's the way in which you've lost some of those games that does call into question the things that Seth mentions. So again, that was a bit of a deviation there. But if you're wondering why does Brad continue to come up in the conversation, I do find it fascinating from a fan's perspective. Why do I feel the way I feel? Why do some fans feel the way they feel? Some stronger than me, for sure. And then it occurs to me that, well, it's messy. It's sports. We've known this guy for almost a decade now. He's our coach. We like a lot of it. We don't like some of it. And it's okay to have that messiness and that gray area and try to discuss things with nuance. Do I allow emotion to get in the way? Hell yeah, I do. I try to be honest with you all about that and say, well, yes, I'm angry. Is it logical? No, it's emotional. That happens sometimes, and will continue to because I'm imperfect. I'm an emotional being. But, yeah. Now let's talk about the players. I mentioned Petrovic. Can we talk about Big Z and what he has brought to this team? I thought we would get Georgie Part 2, and I love me some Georgie Bishanishvili. You don't win the Big Ten tournament back in 2021 without Georgie doing what he did. But Big Z's better. Big Z is an NBA caliber player. Maybe not quite yet. I do think there's another year for him, and I think there's another year for Tommy. I think you bring the twin brothers back next year, and that's a hell of a starting point for your front court. But what Big Z is doing, other than falling down, can we please get him some cleats or like some suction cups on the bottoms of his shoes? That poor guy keeps falling down, and I guess gravity when you're 7'2", it works a little bit different. But why is he falling down? Because he's getting rebounds, and he's playing hard. And he is a great shooter, and he's good around the rim, and he's making his free throws. He could be the starting center on this team. And listen, Tommy brings you something different. We'll talk about him. But damn, man, I mean, I'd say what a find. He was right under your nose the whole time, and Antigua was part of the reason he came over in the first place. It made sense. I did not have these expectations for him. He is surpassing any expectation I had for him and is making this team that much more dangerous. Big Z's been not a revelation. Well, maybe so. A revelation in his consistency. He had some 20-point games last year for Arkansas. By the end of the year, he was getting less and less playing time because he was kind of a mess. He's rejuvenated. I think Brad Underwood said he's gained 30, 40 pounds of muscle or something. I know he speaks hyperbolically sometimes, but he does look bigger. And he is just a huge asset to this team. And he's easy to root for. There's never a question about Big Z's motor. He's always going. And he's skilled. And he's a fun guy. So, like, imagine if Georgie Bishanishvili were an NBA caliber talent. Well, that's what you got with Big Z, and he got 4 more inches. Awesome to see what he's doing. Let's talk about Benham Rickhouse. My friend Andrew texted me yesterday and did not mince words about his feelings of Benham Rickhouse. I know a lot of Illinois fans feel that way. I want him to make shots. We all want him to make shots. There was a reason why his minutes went down, I think, in the second half yesterday. He wasn't going to make shots, and it was a close game. So credit to Brad Underwood for kind of recognizing that in crucial moments, really, he wasn't the guy out there. You actually saw a lot more of Big Z and Tommy together. I love the effort. I love the motor. He's fine off the bench. And if he makes a 3 a game, let's say he shoots 3 threes a game, make one. Make one. I mean, God, what is the three-point shooting percentage right now? I got to check that because it's not good. But I do feel like, man, I'm not going to try to pin any disappointments in March on him. But there are games that are going to happen where the difference in a shot or 2 is all it takes. And if he's getting 15 minutes a game and he's rebounding and he's defending, then he's got to shoot better than 31% from three. He has to. Jake Davis is shooting 40%. Depending on the matchup, Jake Davis is going to start getting more of those minutes. I know he's more of a wing, but you're seeing Ben Henrichhouse occasionally at the three with Merck and one of the Ibasai out there. So Jake Davis gives you a weapon that you don't need to play Ben 20 minutes a game. And that's good. But if Ben starts making the occasional shot, look out. I hope he does, because he's playing so well in every other way. He is defending. He's rebounding. He's making these hustle plays. I'm like, God dang, kid. I remember this last year, but there was a different role that he was being asked to play. So I guess I understand that. Jake Davis, I mentioned, role player supreme. And the fact he came back, took a little bit less money. Maybe there's going to be a jump that he can make as a senior next year, but he's doing everything that you could ask for someone like him. All right, so when you get to, I talked about Petro, fun 4 or 5 minutes yesterday. I don't expect that to be a recurring thing, but one thing I do want to call out is in texting with Trevor and Isaac yesterday, I think Isaac made this point. Remember the Omar Payne game? It was Nebraska, the year that Illinois won the Big Ten title, and Omar Payne took that sucker over in overtime while Kofi was on the bench, if I recall. So, in the long march of a season, even the dudes you wouldn't expect to win you a game can sometimes go win you a game. And that was kind of it for Petrovic yesterday, at least stemming the tide. I tend to agree with the sentiment that Brad Underwood has that you don't win that game without Petrovic. If those last 3 minutes of the half don't go well, then maybe it would have been a different game. But regardless, that was a crucial moment. Another one that Isaac thought of was the Brandon Podziemski at Northwestern, which, again, was that Big Ten championship season. Now, I'm not trying to predict that this Illinois team is going to win a Big Ten championship, but the next 3 road games will go a long way if we're going to have that discussion. All right, as far as your mainstays, right, or basically just your starting 5, David Mirkovic can be a mess. I understand that. I do love his effort. I love his motor, and now he's shooting lights out. He's 37, almost 38% from three. I did not expect that. I don't think the coaching staff necessarily did. I think he was like a 31% shooter over in Europe. But he is shooting very well as of late. I like what he's bringing you. He seems to have really settled in. With freshmen, even an older one like himself, there's that transition phase where you might come out red hot, but then you kind of hit a valley. Mirkovic seems to be hitting that sort of 12, 13, 14 points a game mark rather consistently. And he's not hurting you defensively. As I look here, he is, what are some superlatives of the stats? Nationally, with Ken Pom, he's 194th offensive rebounding rate, and he is 139th defensive rebounding. He is your best offensive rebounder on this team, on what is a very good offensive rebounding team. He's your second best defensive rebounder. Your best defensive rebounder by percentage is Ibasic. Big Z, I should say. So Mirkovic, I'm really liking what I'm seeing from him. Tommy is looking better. He is. He's looking more like himself. He had a really good second half yesterday. Now, there was one moment, and this is what's so weird. I thought it would be shoe on the other foot. The Big Z, who did have the dumb technical against Nebraska earlier this year, but I thought Big Z, if there were to be a guy that had head-scratching decision-making between the brothers, it would be him. It's been Tommy. 2:30 left in the game. I think Illinois at this point is up 9 or 7 points, maybe 9. You're putting the game away. Tommy misses a shot, gets the board. You got 20 fresh seconds in the shot clock. Now, at first, for a couple seconds there, Minnesota was defending the passing lanes. He did not have an immediate out to, let's say, Keaton Wagler on the perimeter. So he kind of gets happy feet, and he shoots this dopey 15-footer from the free throw line, and it hits the front end of the rim. And it's like, Tommy, what the hell was that? And then Minnesota goes down. They make a 3. 5-point swing. Now, you won the game. You won it by 10. You closed it out. It's not as if that play all of a sudden put you on DEFCON 1. It was unnecessary. And with him, there's been these little unnecessary things. If it sounds picky, I understand that. But I'm not worried now about his skill. I'm not worried about his health. I'm worried about his head. Not terribly, but a little bit. Colin Boswell is having a great year. Mr. Consistent. He's getting the line. His defense is settled into what we're accustomed to with him. He is seeming to relish this off-the-ball role. Keaton, it's your show, but I still got my role. He is just excelling. It's so cool to see. I know the three-point percentage isn't fantastic, but he's not shooting a ton of them. He's at just above 30%. But he is looking great. And every team needs that just steadying presence, steadying veteran presence, because I'll get to another steadying presence here in just a minute. Kylan is, to me, like buffed up Trent Frazier. The sort of guy that the team looks to, calms them down, is their biggest cheerleader, their biggest motivator, the hometown kid. I love all the narratives of that as well. It is so cool to see him settle in. I know last year was a struggle at parts, but he ended it so strong, and the question was, can he carry that over? He has. Kylan has been so much fun to watch this year. He's just a big barreling cannonball going towards the rim. He's a dude. One of the few, and I know, oh God, Brad mentioned the Pizza Hut parking lot again this week. I'm just going to laugh at it, but Kylan's the dude you'd send out to the proverbial Pizza Hut parking lot if you wanted to win that fight, because he is a badass. He would kick some ass, and he's doing so on the court, and it's fun to watch. Now, Keaton Wagler, ending on him, and it's amazing that the last two games, his few mistakes have been amplified because we are not accustomed to him making mistakes. This kid is ridiculous. He is the 23rd highest offensive rating in the nation on KenPom as a true freshman. It is a revelation of an evaluation by Brad Underwood that may help you make a deep, deep run in the tournament. I think this team, without a Keaton Wagler, they would have had to figure something out. They might have gotten another guy in the portal, because it seems as if when they got Keaton Wagler and Brandon Lee, they were saying, well, these are our two freshmen. We think they'll play some role. I think they probably anticipated Keaton would be like at least an off-the-bench guy, and that they had enough backcourt depth because they didn't go out and get another portal guy. That was my concern going into the season. No longer. Your backcourt kicks ass. Those two guys, I haven't mentioned Stojakovic, and I'll get to him. But those two guys, and if you want to throw Stojakovic in there, who's more of a true wing, but can play the two if really required, you're feeling really good about Kylan and Keaton next to each other. And the fact that Keaton can have an off night and still do what he has to do. And if that's his off night, look out. He's a lottery pick. He is a burgeoning superstar. There is not enough superlatives that can be thrown his way. He is fantastic. The best freshman that Brad Underwood's ever had. And I heard someone say yesterday, well, might he be? No, it's not might. He is. And not only he is, but he might be the best freshman that Illinois has ever had in the modern era, last 40 years. I cannot remember anyone this good this early. So Stojakovic, off game yesterday. And it's interesting with Stojakovic. He kind of tweaked his ankle and didn't really hurt you too much. His offensive rating is better than what it had been with California and Stanford. The concern that some might have had is that, well, he got his. And in basketball, even bad teams need guys to go get theirs. But the last two games, after a stretch of 3 straight double-digit games, he scored 4 points at Northwestern and 7 against Minnesota. His minutes in each game, 24 against Northwestern, 21 against Minnesota. You know what's interesting is I kept talking about him as if he was a foregone conclusion in the NBA. I'm not seeing that. And that's okay for me. I want him back. I like Andre. But a 6'7" guy that shoots 23% from three is not going to be popping up on many draft boards just yet. It's the potential, which I think he can unlock with another year. I'd love to see him come back. And the Ivisic twins. Keaton, fat chance, but one can hope. But I worry a little bit about if you didn't have Wagler, this would be a major issue, this inconsistency with Stojakovic. You do have Wagler, so it's not. But Stojakovic can easily watch him go for 20 at Purdue. Legit, watch him go for 20 at Purdue. He's a special talent, but there does seem to be, if there's such a thing as a head case, which is a strong word, he seems to be someone that's still kind of figuring things out, maybe more mentally than physically, because he's got the skill set, but for some reason there's nights where he's just not there. Minnesota was one of them. 21 minutes. I mean, that speaks to a lot of that, and maybe he was more defensively than anything. But yeah, we'll see with him. Am I worried? Not long term, but as Jacob says, is Andre sick? Maybe, perhaps. I mean, I guess that's kind of going around, but yeah. All right. This is from, let's see, I got a couple more comments here that I want to get to. From David. Merck is only 18, isn't he? Is he only 18? Okay, he's 20. Thank you, David. Yes. So he's an older freshman. I was happy when they certified him, when he went through the process, the clearinghouse or whatever, and they called him a freshman, thinking, wow, I thought they were going to label him a sophomore because of his age. From Brick Girl, Merck is making some veteran decisions with the ball. He is. And there were a few messy ones yesterday. That will come with it, but he does seem to have settled in big time. Bear down, says Dan. And this is from Mitch. Do you like the future of the Illinois men's basketball program? Just wondering. Yeah, I do. I do. With the questions I've addressed before, and I'm sure most programs have those. But again, I think it's okay to be a little bit messy and not feel like I need to love everything Brad Underwood does or I need to hate everything he does. No, you can have issues with some things, but still acknowledge that it's in a pretty good spot. Your floor is so much higher because of Brad Underwood, and that just puts you naturally in a position to win NCAA tournament games, that's it. Should we enjoy the ride more? I think all fans could probably enjoy the ride more, myself included. Yes. Is it still all about March? It is. Come on. It is. If the Bears lose the Packers last week, I look back as that was a fun season, but what a shitty way to end it. Just would have been. But I didn't. So if this Illinois team makes a second weekend, or look out, a Final Four, they're in the history books. All-time favorites. That's just how it is. And you know what? We are not unique as a fan base in that. Is it a little bit silly with a single elimination tournament? Of course. But that's kind of just what it is. That's sports. The games that matter the most are the ones that come at the end of the year. Always. So I just hope that this team is able to get over that hump, and I think they're in a great position to do so. Just keep winning. Operation 3 seed, fully intact. All right. Thank you all for tuning in on this Sunday morning. Got it out of the way early. I had to say this for Sunday as well because I knew I needed things to do to not go crazy before the 5:30 kickoff for the Bears. But before we go out of here, a reminder that to support us, please support our sponsors, including Hamilton Walkers in downtown Champaign. Steak, seafood, and spirits right in the heart of downtown Champaign. Informal or formal, date night, pregame, postgame meal. It doesn't really matter. Hamilton Walkers is a 5-star dining experience, but there's no pretension. You can wear your Illini gear there. You can wear jeans. It doesn't matter. But you are going to be treated as if you were in the finest steakhouse in the world. And for my money, it is the best restaurant in Champaign-Urbana. Hamilton Walkers in downtown Champaign. State Farm agent Brian Hansen, online at brianismyguy.com. Life, auto, home, business, renters, whatever your needs. Visit online at brianismyguy.com. Dogtown Heating and Plumbing, your home's best friend. Give them a call at 217-841-4728 and join their maintenance program. No overtime or weekend fees, guaranteed same-day service with Dogtown Heating and Plumbing. And finally, Owen Builders LLC, online at owenbuildersllc.com. For your next home improvement project, check out a gallery of their work online at owenbuildersllc.com. Appreciate Luke and the guys over there. Appreciate you as well for listening, for tuning in, for those streaming. And appreciate all of you as you're leaving real quick. Just like, subscribe, follow wherever you may be watching. And I think we will come back Wednesday evening for a live reaction. Did not talk about Illini football today. Xavier Scott coming back. Huge news. Got to get some D linemen. I presume that they will. We'll see about staff changes. Might do a kind of recap of that sometime in the next week or two once the portal, which is now closed, or at least to enter it, and when the roster and the coaching staff dust settles, we'll have a conversation about that. But it is Illini basketball season, and you got a pretty damn good Illini basketball team. So we'll see you Wednesday night for the second half of the Maryland game. Hopefully we can just kind of sit back, relax, and enjoy, unlike most Maryland games, because they suck. Illinois does not. Go Bears, and we'll see you soon. It is the 200 level.